I'd like to invite Dr. Hoesung, Chair of IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to give his special speech. He is a former ICF Steering Committee member. Dr. Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Director General Suehasu. It's my honor to be here to give a few remarks about how IPCC is contributing to the implementation of the Paris Agreement. As you know very well, governments are ready to implement the Paris Agreement, and so also the science community is ready to provide robust science for implementing the Paris Agreement. Robust science in the sense that it's policy relevant, but not policy prescriptive. COP22 is known as a COP of action. It's true when governments will start to flesh out the Paris Agreement. It calls for, as you know very well, global warming to be kept well below 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels, while pursuing efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The IPCC, under the Paris Agreement, is preparing a special report of global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. We will inform policymakers and business leaders of the mitigation pathways that are compatible with 1.5 degrees Celsius, its impact on natural and human systems, as well as strengthening and implementing the global response to the threat of climate change and its implication, 1.5 degree warming's implication for sustainable development, poverty eradication, and reducing inequalities. These are the core of the development strategies of many developing countries in the region, in the world. The new scientific findings of these issues will be delivered in September 2018. We believe that this year, 2018, will be a very memorable year. This will be the year when nations under the Paris Agreement will conduct a facilitative dialogue. This is to assess how the global aggregate of their individual actions and commitments are tracking with regard to global mitigation goals. 2018 will also be the year when the nations update their NDCs, the nationally determined contributions for 2025 and 2030. The facilitative dialogue is thus to inform these update activities. The IPCC special report on 1.5 degree warming will provide the scientific base for the 2018 facilitative dialogue. Transparency is key to the implementation of the Paris Agreement. The countries must be able to measure the greenhouse gas emissions and removals accurately, and so that actions and commitments can be transparent and comparable. To help with this process, IPCC is refining the guidelines used by countries to measure emissions. This is stipulated by the Article 13 of Paris Agreement. This update to the IPCC methodology will be ready by 2019. We found significant gaps in the scientific understanding of the oceans and cryosphere in relation to climate change, and also of the relation between climate change and desertification and other land-related issues. Thus, the IPCC decided to conduct a special report on these two key important aspects of climate change. The new scientific findings will be available again in 2019. We expect that these special reports will be rich in providing information, among others, on regional aspects of climate change, and thus useful for adaptation as well as mitigation planning. As you are aware, under the Paris Agreement, the countries are to submit the long term, which is mid-century, that's the agreement language, but it is interpreted as year 2050, long-term greenhouse gas emissions development strategies. Now this submission is due in 2020. Therefore, we anticipate that our special report, 2 special reports, along with the special report 1.5, will facilitate this process. The Paris Agreement calls for the IPCC report to be a key input into the global starting. Our next comprehensive full report on climate change, its impact and vulnerabilities and responses to climate change will be ready by 2020, just in time for the first global start date a year later. As our new assessment will be the first full IPCC assessment to follow the Paris Agreement, it will put a big emphasis on solutions to climate change. Science, may I say, that has shown that actions to tackle climate change, both mitigation and adaptation, are complementary to sustainable development. Responding to climate change builds resilience and prosperity to developing countries. This means that climate policy should be mainstreamed into development strategies. These are our latest assessments clearly indicated. In this regard, it is important that countries do not lock in high carbon infrastructure that will put the 2 degrees goal out of reach. ICEF project initiated by Japan in this regard hold valuable lessons here. The barriers to a zero carbon society do not arise in science. After all, we already know enough to take actions on a path to a global carbon-free economy. But that was one of the key messages from various scientific findings, including one of the IPCC reports. That was the last assessment report. Most of the barriers are economic, social, institutional, and political. We need to assess these barriers, and in so doing, we need close collaboration between natural and social science disciplines. Barriers can be an opportunity for new economic development, new socio-economic advancement. So we need to understand very clearly about what contributes to the barrier and what contributes to lowering of that variable. In that sense, we need to understand very much of the matters that we have believed beyond our scope of understanding, but we certainly can handle with our improved knowledge, with our improved technological capabilities, that we can develop a better world and better society in terms of a sustainable development. The Paris goal prompts the science community to improve our knowledge of the timing and the specific impacts of different levels of warming, which will greatly help with planning necessary adaptation and mitigation measures. For this, we need to improve, certainly from the science perspective, a very clear understanding of the consequences of peak warming and the duration of potential temperature overshoot. And this will have a variety of policy-laden implications for future action. May I say that the Paris Agreement is based upon robust scientific findings. So I also say that so should be its implementation. I believe that ICEF initiative will contribute greatly to this effort. Thank you very much for your attention.